Okay, so last week we began our formal discussion on the 13 principles. Everyone with me? And we discussed how logically it's not possible to say that the first principle is talking about belief in God. Because you can't write a book about belief in your religion and say that the first principle is that you should believe in the religion, because in the book that we wrote about the religion, we said that you should believe in the religion. Because if you don't believe in the religion, then you don't believe in the book. And the religion and the book are all collaborating. So then it's a big joke. You don't believe in the book, you don't believe who wrote the book, you don't know who wrote the book. So then whatever it says in the book is irrelevant. So we must say that the belief in God is a prerequisite to the principles. And even though that you'll find in many places that it's translated as such, that the first principle is belief in God, but and at a basic level you could say it that way, you know. But if you really want to understand what it means, and certainly if you want to understand what it means according to Chassidus, which is the inner meaning and inner understanding of everything in Torah, so then we must say that belief in God itself or Himself cannot be the first principle. And so therefore we understood that really, if you look more carefully into the words of the principle itself, you don't really need to go that far, that deep. You don't have to scratch the surface that deep. You just need to take the words more literally, which is like it says that Hashem, read it for you, that He creates and guides all creatures. It doesn't say anywhere about believing in Him and so on, but that He creates and guides all creatures, and that He alone makes and will make everything. So that He creates everything and He guides everything, and that's the way it's always been, that's the way it is, and that's the way it always will be. And so therefore, really, according to all of the major commentaries, the first principle is about believing in God as a primary cause. Okay, so that's the simple understanding based on the commentaries. In other words, the first principle is that we are understanding or believing in His existence. But we have already decided that we are going to believe, that we're taking on faith that He exists. And while the first principle is about existence, it's about a certain type of existence. In other words, the question is not, does God exist? Do we believe that God exists, that it's a thing, that but the question is, which type of God exists? As you have different religions in the world, and people say, well, what's the difference? We all believe in God and we're all serving God. So what's the difference? I serve my God in my way, we serve your God in your way, you serve your God, whatever, but it's all the same God. And the answer is that no, it's not. And so therefore, if you're serving someone else's God, or someone else is Jewish, thinks that they can serve another so-called God and still be intending or meaning that they're serving the same God, it's not. And that's why this is the principle of faith. It's a fundamental of faith, because the fundamental is to believe in this God, not in the God, just a God, or just believe that God exists. Because a lot of religions believe that God exists in all types of variations, each one in their own way of what they think that God is and what His purpose is and so on. But it's not semantics. It's not just this, there's a general belief in God, and this one believes that God does these things, and this one believes that God does other things. It's not that that's not the way it works, because the purpose of the principles and the purpose of of Judaism, the purpose of God choosing the Jewish people, and the purpose of God giving the Torah to the Jewish people and giving them the mitzvah specifically, and choosing the Jewish people to learn that Torah and to do those mitzvahs, is in order to create a relationship. The creation of a relationship is specific. So if you're choosing to enter into a relationship with God that he's not a part of, so then you're involved in the wrong relationship. You're not in the right marriage. Which is why the first two commandments of the 10 Commandments is that you can't serve idols, because first and foremost there has to be an exclusivity. There has to be an understanding that we're in a relationship, in an exclusive relationship with God. So while the first principle is talking about existence, but it's talking about existence in a much more specific way, and it's saying that the first thing, if you want to have a relationship with God, if you want to believe in the God that has chosen you, so then that belief in God is the God that created heaven and earth. That is the God that is the primary cause for every single thing that happens in the world. Now, why is that important? What's the difference if I believe in what's the difference what I believe that God does? If I believe in God, so then isn't that something? Isn't that a thing? Isn't that worthwhile? Isn't that a worthy thing? In other words, if I believe in God, but I believe but I also believe in the Trinity. Or I believe in God and I believe in his prophet that descended on a mountain somewhere in Mecca or whatever. It's fine, and I can believe that he created the world in 6 days or whatever. Why does that take away from my belief in God? Why does that make me not believe in the Jewish God? Why does that remove me from the belief? Why does that remove me from the faith that I'm not believing in our God? I'm believing in someone else's God. And so, without going into too many details, the main answer, or the short answer to the question is, that God is like we said before, is that if God is if there's a relationship, so then you can't believe in things that by definition exist outside of the relationship. So believing in the Trinity is idolatrous. It's idolatrous because it's not believing in God and only God. It's right away, right off the bat, transgressing the first two commandments by saying that God doesn't like images. He doesn't like graven images. He doesn't like idols. Something he doesn't like. If you understand it, you don't understand it. If you understand why serving idols is cheating on God or cheating on your spouse, so it's irrelevant. I mean, it's pretty easy to understand, but if you don't, it's okay. It's just something he doesn't like. And if he doesn't like it and you're in a relationship with him, so then the specifics are important, the details are important. The details of the relationship are important because you're in a relationship with something, someone, whatever. So there's a specificity to the way the relationship works. If you decide to say God loves me and whatever I do is okay because God still loves everyone, and you know. So it's not taking it's to say that God doesn't love you, so then that would be wrong. But to say that I can do whatever I want and God will still love me, so that's taking the relationship for granted. that's saying that I could do whatever I want in my marriage. And could you open the door quickly? This is Yafi?
This is Yafi.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. There's your answer. I feel terrible to schlep her up and down the stairs. Okay.
Shall someone goes and pick the copies? So she
She
doesn't come again.
Okay, I'm not asking you, but I feel bad. You understand what I'm saying? Does any of this make sense to anyone? Okay, so all this we can understand. So where's the faith? What's the faith point? What do we have to take on faith? It's a very simple thing. If a person wants a relationship with a person, so then you have to meet, you have to talk, you have to find out if the relationship that you're looking for, that you want, or that makes sense for you, makes sense to them, and vice versa. So you go, you check out the religion, you find out what does God want, what do I have to believe in, whatever. So this is okay. This all makes sense. Nothing here so far is something that goes beyond human understanding, or something that we have to understand, that we don't understand. Where is the faith point here? What do we have to take on faith in this principle? So this is where we get into the nitty-gritties of what it is that means primary cause. And why it's important, like we asked last week, why is it important to say, yeah. How many are there? How many did she make? This is it. This is all of them. So yeah, there's barely enough to go around. No? 2, 3.
So you don't have to go back up and down.
Okay, whatever. Yeah, pass out as many as you can. Maybe there's more there than I realized. Yeah.
Oh, that's not terrible. I like that. I can actually see it. It was. I know.
Is there enough?
Yeah.
Amazing.
It seems more than it
Yeah, I thought it was
right?
a thicker packet.
Yeah.
I realized it's really quite thin.
And it's some left also.
Is there extra? Awesome, thank you. Okay. Where were we?
The faith.
What do we have?
Right, what do we have to take on faith? So if we look more carefully at the, or even if we look just at the surface of the surface understanding, yeah.
So so basically the beginning of this is everyone believes in God, whether they realize it or not. Like people who
No, it's a choice. Some people don't believe in God. There's a lot of atheists that wouldn't appreciate your statement.
okay, fine. But like really we exist because God exists. So deep down everybody knows that God exists.
No.
I don't know, we were saying
Alright.
something like that in Hasidic, and I get what
So a Jewish person knows deep in his soul that God exists. You can't deny, and that's what we was talking about. I don't know what the other teacher was talking about. I can't represent whatever or say, but possibly what you may be referring to is what we said in the beginning of the class, or the beginning of the series, that a Jew has faith that's implanted in his soul and his heart. A Jew has love of God implanted in his heart by nature. And a Jew can't really fully deny that. The question is, how long can you ignore it for? So some people are successful in ignoring it for their whole life. Some people are just so unaware, which is not their fault. They weren't brought up a certain way, or they weren't taught certain things. So what they don't know, you don't know. But even those Jews, when they know that they're Jewish, or if they know that they're Jewish, and they're told that they have to deny their faith, so you'll see that faith that will come out. Like you see in many stories about people that literally gave up their lives for God, for Jewish faith, to sanctify God's name without knowing anything about it. So there's a certain nerve, there's a certain point inside the heart of every Jew that can't deny God. So it's like a survival instinct, right? You have to come up with creative ways. People have to come up with creative ways to kill themselves, because a person can't kill themselves. Like at the moment of death, you can't do it. You have to put something in motion that robs you of your instinct, just to jump off a building or whatever. I'm not here to give ideas, especially if people are actually entertaining this. But so the same thing. So there's a survival instinct in there, and the last minute, a person will say, "No, I can't." You can't. The body physically can't destroy itself. So to the soul also, you can't deny your existence. In other words, for the soul to say God doesn't exist is to say that I don't exist. The soul is a part of God. So I don't know if that's what that teacher was talking about, but that's to the extent that. But we're talking about faith in a real way. We're talking about faith in we're trying to upgrade our faith. We're trying to experience faith in a real way, in a way of understanding, in a way of that it should be relevant and living and part of our daily life. So again, so when you look into the principle itself, you find where it says that the belief in God, in other words, if the first principle is about belief in God, but belief in God, a specific type of God, or believe in the God that is the primary cause for all things, believe in the God that's the creator of heaven and earth. So you have other religions that also believe that God created heaven and earth. As far as I know, the other two major religions in the world both believe that God, they believe in the Bible, and they believe that God created the world in 6 days. So what are we denying? Or what are we saying that we can't do if we're believing in the other religion, or we believe in the other God? Or we say that the other religions are not the contradiction to ours. And so he says that in the principle itself, it says that it's specific, that we have to believe that God is both the creator, that he created everything, that he is creating, and he will create everything. Now, why is that an imperative? Why is it imperative to say that God created everything before and God will create everything moving forward? So this is to introduce this concept called Ma'ayin Liyesh, that Hashem created something from nothing, right? And this concept of nothing is not something that we can really grasp. It's not something that we really have to take on faith. It's just something that this is the ultimate box that we can't get out of, right? We live in existence, yeah? And existence only exists in time and space. And there is no example or experience that exists outside of that box. And so to talk about it, to think about what was before creation is just impossible. When we think about nothingness, we think about the air, but the air is in the air, and the atmosphere is in the air. And then if you think about space and outer space and deep space, but you're still entirely just as much in the universe as you are when you're sitting in your living room. It's all space that was created by God. We're talking about a time and a place when there was no time and place. And Hashem created all of the things that exist that we know, that exist that we don't know, all from nothingness, absolute nothingness. And to believe this is to believe that God not only created everything, but that he must have created everything. And if he created anything at any point in time, that means that he always created it, he is creating it, and he will always create it. Because like last week when we talked about the tissue box, that it will definitely fall, but how ironic it is, how strange it is to believe that the world is random and it's just floating in the sky, and it's all just it's all working in this incredibly detailed, incredibly detailed orchestration of the universe as that orbits, etc., and that's random, and that's not falling out of the sky. No one's holding it up. The tissue box, we know that for sure, if someone lets go, then it's definitely going to fall. So the concept of Mein Liyesh dictates, it tells us that if something is created out of nothing, so in the same way that the rules of gravity dictate that if you're holding something, you're suspending something in air, as soon as that suspension is released, then the item will fall. So the belief in Mein Liyesh is that the only reason why something is in existence is because that something is being compelled into being not only once, so that it was compelled into being at one time, but that it's always being compelled into being. It's the same exact rules, just like gravity dictates that everything that goes up must come down. And that if something is suspended in air, it's because something is suspending it in air. So to also, Ein Liyesh, things that are created from nothing also need to be compelled into existence. Ongoing, constantly. So last week, 2 weeks ago, we read about Pashas Noach, and we read about the Mabul that God wanted to destroy the earth, so he brought a big flood. But if God wants to destroy the world, there's a much, much easier way for him to destroy the world. He doesn't have to do something that the world is not a reality that God has to deal with, that he created, and now he has to deal with it. So he doesn't like what's going on in the world, so he had to bring a flood. He didn't have to do that. What would be an easier way for God to have destroyed the world? In other words, not to do something. He didn't have to do anything. He just had to stop doing something. He had to stop. He had to release what he's doing constantly. And then the world would cease to exist. Yeah.
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the more that we talk about this and stuff, how do you draw the line between a creator and then also feeling like you're in a simulation?
You're what?
In a simulation. I feel like the more we talk about
you are in a
faith,
simulation.
How do you not feel uncomfortable with that? I picture I'm in a TV or God's playing a video game and then it's purposely bam, destroying the world, and that's what I picture in my head, or here we're gonna give you food, or let this loose, or whatever. But how do you that's what it's like. It feels weird. And it's what's the purpose if you're just in a simulation,
So let's talk about it more, because I feel like we haven't really established that we're living in a simulation. You're maybe a step or two ahead, or does everyone realize this? Does everyone get this?
Well, it's not a simulation. A story ends well. A story needs.
Yeah, in Hollywood, yeah.
So you don't have to worry about the ending. So it's I'm an actress. We're playing a part.
Absolutely, we're all playing a part.
Oscar at the end?
Yeah.
Nice. All right.
So let's understand this just a little bit. Let me just flesh out this idea for anyone and for myself also, if you don't mind. So this idea of Mein Liyesh, it creates. Before I forget this point, I want to make sure I understood it. That everything has a faith point, but also a way of drawing God closer to us and to our experience. In other words, if faith is going to be real in our lives, so it's important to understand how God is close to me and how God is involved in my life and I'm involved in his, or whatever, or that I mean something to him, that I'm important to him, and why and how. So if you say that God is the creator of all the universe and you understand things just on a surface level, if you say that God is infinite or God is whatever, anytime you try to describe God, it makes him sound not like us. It makes him sound godly. It makes him sound infinite, all knowing, all powerful, all seeing, all whatever. He created the world. I mean, not only did he create the world, but he created the world from nothingness that we can't even fathom. We can't even fathom the nothingness, let alone how you get from nothingness to somethingness. So that's on the surface. Now, when you look at Chassidus and you understand what this concept of Ma'ayin Liyesh is that you understand that Ma'ayin Liyesh, something from nothing, means that something always has to be there. Not that something that was created, there's something that created it. Something always has to be compelling it constantly, like the lights in the ceiling. If there isn't constant power flowing through the lights will go off like that. And if God wanted to destroy the world, instead of bringing a flood and then raining for 40 days and 40 nights, all he had to do is just stop thinking about the world. It's a constant thought process. Not only that, but let me see if I can stretch your mind just a little bit and understand it like this. If your reality today is all a figment of God's imagination, or like you said, a simulation, think about how much less of a reality yesterday was today, or tomorrow is today. Tomorrow didn't happen yet. Yesterday's already in the past. Where do you go back to see what happened yesterday? Where does yesterday exist? In our minds, right? So first of all, it's all subjective reality. Yesterday only exists based on what I remember happened yesterday, or how I saw yesterday. What?
There's videos and pictures.
Yeah, but but everyone sees it differently. Yeah, or do I have to explain that, or you understand? Subjective reality. If you have 5 people who grew up in the same house and they all tell the same story completely differently, with pictures and video to prove it. Everyone grew up with different parents. It's a reality. Also, there happens this Israeli girl that was backpacking in the Himalayas after she finished the army. And it's a true story, I promise. You're going to tell me, no, that's crazy. You just made that up, but it's a true story. And she came back with like a stack of pictures. This is way back in the day when people actually printed their pictures and they had like, she comes out of the pictures and she's showing someone, her friend, the pictures. And there's like 175 pictures, like the majority of the stack is a picture of this flower somewhere on top of a mountain somewhere and for the first 2-3 pictures, it's a really nice flower and it's on top of a mountain, it's very picturesque and everything. But like 75 pictures in, you're like, what? Like what are the... And so this girl that took the pictures is like looking over her shoulders, isn't this beautiful? This is amazing. And look at that one, and look at that one. It's the same picture. It's the same picture. So she says, so after a while, it's just like it's coming like exaggerated, like what's going on? So she says, why do you take so many pictures? If you don't mind me asking, like, why do you take so many pictures of the same flower? So she says, what do you mean? It's not about the flower. The flower is in the background. And she thinks she's looking at a picture of a flower. And so she says, you don't see the lights? You don't see the angels? You don't really? She was dead serious. In other words, she had taken substance that was so powerful that when she saw the flower, she saw angels dancing around the flower. Not only that, but it fried her brain so badly that 6 months later, a year later, whatever, when she was back in Israel, she was looking at the pictures, and she's seeing in the pictures what she hallucinated at the time when she was whatever. So, pictures, everyone is. Anyway. What was I saying? So yesh ma'ayin has to be constant. Not only does yesh ma'ayin have to be constant, but meaning that everything that exists right now, that God has to be thinking about this table and everything on it and everyone sitting here, it's for all of it to be constantly in existence. If God would stop thinking about any one of us or any one of these things that are in this room, they would cease to exist. But they wouldn't all just cease to exist today and now and here. It wouldn't be that suddenly I'm looking at this pen and then suddenly the pen would disappear. We would all gasp and say, where did the pen go? No, the pen would cease to exist from when it began existing.
So we wouldn't notice it.
We wouldn't, it would be pulled out of sort of, so to speak, to use a programming or website language, if anyone's familiar. You would be pulling out the existence of the pen from the back end of creation. Understand what that means?
Yeah.
It means that if you deleted, if your Gmail account was deleted, so then, or your Facebook account was deleted, so then every single comment or every single message that you ever sent would be deleted and sucked out from the back of the server automatically, and you would cease to exist entirely. Your footprint, your whatever it was that whatever your history is on the website would cease to exist entirely. The same thing as in creation. If God would stop thinking about you, so he would stop thinking about you not only in the moment, but he would stop thinking about every single moment that you experienced from the moment that you were born until now. In other words, God is not only creating you in the moment now, he's also creating all of your memories and all of the reality that's connected with all other people's memories in order to keep everyone sane, in order to create all of history and life and so on in existence.
Does he ever do that? That's what you're talking about, like a pen, just like.
You would never know.
How
You
would
would
they?
never, no one would ever know.
Because you could, like, delete
If
it.
God stopped thinking about someone that you've known your whole life, then all of the memories of you and this person, whatever, would cease to exist entirely. And you never knew this person. It never existed. In other words, your reality, your existence is a simulation, even in the reality and now. How much more so is everything that exists from the past also being held together by God. And I want to just take this a step further, because we just said that everyone lives in their own reality. Now, I see a picture of a flower, or you see a picture of a flower, and I see angels and lights and whatever, my hallucinations. God is recreating my hallucinations in my mind to reinforce, or to, not to reinforce, but to sustain my reality for me. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, God sees it just, God sees or creates things a certain way. We experience it in our own way, and then God continues to create that experience, even though it's completely flawed or a complete hallucination. And so every single person in the world with their own mashagas, with their own craziness in their head about what happened or what they experienced, what they saw, whatever, and how they interacted, all of that is being, that whole world that's in your head is being created and recreated by God constantly. Every single person, all of the billions of people that exist in the world. And also, not only right at this moment, but all of the people that revised history, right? You know, this concept of revisionist history, right? Everything is subjective. So every person that ever wrote anything down in history wrote it down based on their perspective. I read an article a little while ago about something that happened 20, 30 years ago. So I happen to have been around 20, 30 years ago. And 20, 30 years ago, the thing that the person was writing the article about what happened way back when, in the olden days, so this person was not around 30 years ago. And they're talking about what happened based on their research and speaking with people that were there, or historical stuff, or videos, pictures, whatever. And they depicted the things as they understood it based on their research. I read the article and I was like, what is this guy talking about? This is not what happened. So the reality is that this is what happened for those people that he interviewed. It was mind-boggling, because I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I'm standing there in the room together with these other people. These people, those people were there. I was there. I had a completely different experience. I didn't see it that way at all. It wasn't my perspective. So God is creating and recreating. So someone writes a book, someone writes an article. That book, that history book, an article, or whatever, and that the way that history is described and depicted is something that's being created. That subjective reality, however close or far from the truth it is, however much of a bald-faced lie it is, even, doesn't make a difference. God is creating it because that's your impact on the world, and he's creating all of those perspectives and all of those minds constantly, all throughout history, and all of your memories and everything. Each person individually, it's an awesome amount of details. I don't know I don't know if there's any computer that's big enough to hold such enormous amount of information. But why is all this important? Why is it important for us to learn about this and to know about this and to get a little uncomfortable about the fact that we're in a simulation or that our lives are not really real? We're just kind of this kaleidoscope that exists in God's mind that he's kind of just orchestrating in his head. We're just basically a figment of God's imagination, and God's thinking about us, and therefore, right? What did Descartes say? I think, therefore I am. So that's not true. It's that God thinks, and therefore you are. So God thinks. That doesn't mean that that Descartes is wrong, but but your existence is because you exist in God's head. All of creation, the entire world, the entire universe is God's imagination. It's God's thinking about us and all of us, and it's a whole movie that God's playing in his own head. Why is that important? I'm going to get to it in a second. Why is that important? Why is it important that we understand this? Why is it important to feel smaller than we are and farther from God, which, if this whole purpose is a relationship, the point is to understand that you are so important that God will be constantly thinking about you on an ongoing basis, and that everything that's going on in your life, not only in your life, but in your head. In other words, if you remember it, if it's your reality, then God is thinking about it. God is not only thinking about it, but he's creating it. He's creating it. He's creating your subjective reality and everything that you experienced, however close or far it is from the objective truth, constantly, in order to keep you in your space and keep you moving forward and keep you sane and keep your continuity. So this is not about distance. This is about closeness. This is about understanding that everything that you go through in life, everything that you remember, everything that you don't remember, everything that you experience, God is involved in. Not only is God involved in, but he knows and he remembers, and not only he knows and remembers, but he's creating it and recreating it for you at every second. He has to, otherwise it wouldn't exist, because nothing exists. Nothing objectively exists. God has placed things in certain places in a certain way, and all of it is a projection of his imagination, of his thoughts. Make sense?
Yeah. So good.
Who's waiting on questions? You? Yeah.
So does that mean that like people who have Alzheimer's and are like forgetting people who exist in their lives, does that mean like Hashem's like
God's forgetting about them?
Yeah.
No. Unfortunately, no. I wish it was that simple, but no. The people that are suffering from Alzheimer's, it's very real. No, if God would stop thinking about it, then no one would know that these people exist, and then they wouldn't have Alzheimer's. We all would.
Yeah.
We wouldn't know that we would all not know, right? It's not just your brain that God deleted God created forgetfulness. If he wants to delete a particular thing that's in your head, so all he has to do is just help you forget. Which is also something that he creates. In other words, God doesn't forget anything. There is no forgetfulness. He remembers everything. Forgetfulness is a symptom of this world. It's a symptom of galus, even more so. It's a symptom of the lack of godliness in the world. Because God is forever and everything, always. So if God is everything and always, so then there's no, then he's always. Also, God doesn't experience time the way we do. So everything exists, past, present, and future exists all together. So therefore, there's no time to forget. It just happened. Everything is always just happening. God is remembering everything that happened, is happening, and will happen, and thinking about it constantly. He has to, or else it doesn't exist. So if he's always thinking about it, so it's just everything happened now. So he doesn't forget anything. We forget things. And he created that in order for things to be in the forefront of our mind. The background. Again, all this is to create a life for us that works, that helps us stay sane. Forgetting things is sometimes very, very, very helpful. It's a kindness. You have to feel bad for God that he has to remember all the crazy things that we've done. But again, but if God truly stopped thinking about something, if he deleted something from existence, so you wouldn't know that you forgot something because it never existed. And no one would know what happened to remind you of it because, again, it never existed. If it never existed, how could anyone remember? If no one can remember, no one experienced it, no one remembered, no one can remind you. It never happened. It never happened. In retrospect, it never happened. Yeah? Make sense? So what this means is, so now we understand a few very, very basic psukim that we find throughout Torah, where it says, it says that God created the world with 10 utterances, 10 sayings, 10 phrases. He said, let there be light, and let there be this, and let there be that. And then these things came into being. How does that happen? That happened through the power in God's speech, compelled these things into being. And because he compelled these things into being through speech, and we're saying that these things have to constantly be in existence, or constantly being compelled into existence. So for the words that he spoke into the world, into the atmosphere, into the heavens, so to speak, has to always be there. And those words have to be constantly, just like they compelled those things into existence, into being. The first time, they have to always be there and always be compelling those things into existence constantly. So the words of "Let there be light" are emblazoned in the heavens. They're fixed in the heavens, and through those letters, the energy that's in those letters and the energy that God pours through those letters is constant. It's constant. It must be. So the 10 utterances, the 10 things that Hashem said in order to compel the universe into existence exists and is being said and enforced and reinforced now at this moment and always and in the past in the same way that it was in the first moment. And what that means is that there is no place anywhere in the world that's possible that God is not there, that God doesn't exist there. Because if God would not be there, God would not be compelling everything into existence. God would not thinking about it. God would not be there with every single creation, where it is, as it is, etc. It would cease to exist. It wouldn't be here. So not only is God with us and all of our experiences and all of our thoughts and all of our achievements and our successes and our failures, but He's also with every single thing everywhere. There is nothing else that really exists except for God. The only thing that's objectively existing, the only thing that's objectively really real and really here is God's existence. Any questions?
You say objectively or subjectively?
Subjective. Objectively. We're all subjectively real.
So he's the only real thing.
That's what we say every day, that Einod Milvado, that there is nothing else except for Him.
So we could say that everything in the past never actually happened.
In the same way that this conversation is not happening and you and I are not here. In the same way that all of that is really not real. So then the things that happened in the past are equally as not real. In other words, the past and the things that exist in your mind are all, no, they're just as real. They're just as real as what it is, as our existence here now. Yeah.
So if like.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if God's the only thing that exists, like it's so morbid, but like what's the point of being here? You know what I mean?
For ourselves or for Him?
No, like for us, like
What
each
would Hashem do
person.
if he didn't have people in this video game to play with?
Well, you feel your existence, don't you?
Yeah.
Good. That's healthy. Okay.
No, you shouldn't be worried. I'm just
I'm not worried, and I wasn't really expecting to hear no. It's not really something that you're not living outside the human experience. You know, you're here.
Yeah.
So
It's like from our perspective, that's what makes it worth being here. Because like we're experiencing it, we're here. So when like when you look at the big picture, you see like the true like power source almost of
Right.
everything.
But if you take your question a step further, you understand how much God loves every single creation and every single one of us. Because from God's perspective, it's all a video game. It's all code, so to speak. It's not really real. It's very, very far from anything real and tangible. But for you, your life is real. And everyone who comes in contact with you, all of us pseudo-real things that are interacting on a subjectively real level, all believe and feel that we are existing and real outside of God's existence. We are independent beings roaming around the blue marble, and we are doing our own thing. And so if good things happen to us, then we're happy. And if bad things happen to us, we're sad. And all of that made up stuff is important to you and me because it's our lives. At least we think that this is like important in our lives and so on. But when you're looking at it from God's perspective, like what you just said, it's completely meaningless. It's a video game.
How do we like not know?
So what does that, wait a second, what does that mean? What does that mean? How much does that show God's interest and love and care and concern for every single one of us? Awesome.
I set fires everywhere on purpose.
Right.
Why?
Right, and you don't care how many lives you lose,
Yeah.
as long as you have enough to end the game.
Yeah, like
So
whatever.
so lives in a video game are dispensable. They're completely meaningless. They're just dots on the screen.
Yeah.
So if God is looking at us, in reality, we're just dots on the screen. We're so minuscule. It's not even funny. But God is involved in every. We are so small. Even in the what's it called? Even in the universe, the globe is so small. You ever see those videos where like they zoom out? They go like Google Earth, whatever. You have like a little thing, and you zoom out and zoom out and zoom out and zoom out.
But then they zoom in.
So if you're all the way beyond time and space, if you're God and you're looking down at the solar system, we are this tiny speck. The whole globe is one little tiny speck. And in that tiny speck, there's 6-9 billion people, and each one with their own problems and whatever. And it looks so insignificant from so far away. So if you think of God as being that far away, so then everything that I'm thinking and the things that I'm struggling with and my problems, whatever, are so like I'm this tiny this little light that's floating in the. And if you zoom out far enough, you can't even see that light. It just gets mushed together with all the other lights around it. And the whole Milky Way becomes just like one little swirl of ice cream in the middle of the. So if God is that far away, he's in and right, and these pictures are taken from still within the universe, right? God is outside of the universe, even farther away. So if you look at God as that, if you think about God in that way, so then the more and more you think about how amazing God is and how great God is and so on. So then he becomes farther and farther and farther and farther away to not possibly care about my parking space or my kids this morning before going to school were arguing over a sweatshirt. Like it's no way that God is like getting involved in this petty argument about who gets to wear which sweatshirt. I mean, I didn't even want to get involved in it, let alone God. Or like, why does he want to get involved? Like, just pick the sweatshirt and get to the bus, and that's it. Yeah. So the fact that God is involved in all of these different things, in every single detail in our life, so much so that he cares about it and he's creating it and recreating it constantly, shows how significant to him every single one of us are, and every single one of us is here for a purpose. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to be thinking and worrying about all the stuff that's going on with us. And he wouldn't have to be creating and recreating everything that's going on with us. But there is a purpose. He has a purpose. We have a purpose. We're here for a reason. And every single thing that happened to us and with us and for us is all for a reason. And he knows all these reasons, and all this stuff he's creating and recreating constantly in order to show us that we matter, and to show us that the things that we choose, the things that we even just think about, let alone actually do or say, but even just think about, is vastly important to the whole grandmaster plan of everything that you see when you zoom all the way out and you see all of the planets and everything and all that stuff. All of it is sitting on the next thing that you choose to say or do or think. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. This Friday there is no Gemara class, so we will see you. We'll see you guys early next week.
Thank you.